Welcome back to Learning with Merit. Today we're going to talk about search engines. We're going to look at what is a search engine. We're going to look at the different internet search engines that are available to us. We're going to look at how a search engine works. We're going to look at crafting basic queries for search engines, some advanced search operators, and even something for most of us that'll be very fun called Google dorking or Google hacking. So what is a search engine? And that's a really good question because most of us have used search engines before. Maybe you didn't know what they were called, but you've definitely used them if you ever used the internet. And the reason is search engines are necessary because remembering all of the different links to go to different places on the internet is extremely difficult for us. And so having a tool that helps us find places on the internet to go is necessary. And this is what a search engine is. So it's a program that helps people find information online by indexing websites and then matching those websites to what we call a search query. Now, what is a search query? If you look right here, you'll see this little question that I have written into the search bar. Now, it's not always the best idea to write a question, but in this case I have because it's what most people are comfortable with. And you can even see up here in the URL, there is my search query in the URL to generate this page. Now, in order to generate this page, it doesn't make much sense for the search engine to search literally every website the minute that you ask the question. If it did that, it would take forever for any results to come back. So we need a way for the search engines to actually search the internet before you ever ask the question. And so it creates this giant table, basically, of websites. And believe it or not, a large portion of the internet is still unindexed. So even when you do a search like this, there are a huge number of sites that are not indexed that you would never see even in the, huge number of results that we get here. So let's take a look at a website. Let's go down here to Wikipedia because it's a simple one. What actually is done is they use something called a web crawler. And so a web crawler, also known as a spider or a spider bot, is a little program that browses the web systematically by following hyperlinks. Right? And I can actually prove to you one of the tools that we use for this. So if you'll see wikipedia.org up here, most websites these days, if they're looking to control those little robots, they have a robots.txt file. And if you know where to look, you can find that robots.txt file in the URL. So here is the robots file for Wikipedia, and you'll see that they make some references to misbehaved spiders, which is kind of funny. But they have a lot of information here on little bots and things that they use for all kinds of different things. But some of them, of course, are for search engines because they're feeding search engines. And this right here, UB crawler, there's a crawler, right? And we've got several different ones, some other little crawlers down here, other little bots, right? And things like that. But you can take a look at this because most websites, especially nowadays, that are looking to be on Google, because that's how they get to their audience, they have a robots.txt file. Let's go look at another one, see if I can find another one. Let's try TechTarget here. Let's see if they've got a robot.txt file. And sure enough, they do. So I encourage you to try this with different little websites because this is an interesting little thing to look at because most of them have this file now. Let's look at Britannica. Let's see if they have that. Sure enough, they do. Look at that. Alrighty, so this is basically what a search engine is. It's there for searching things on the internet. So let's talk about search engines. By and large, the largest search engine that exists is Google. And here I have a classic Google or Google results page here where I've searched for Google itself. And Google is actually a technology company, But because their search engine has become so popular and is used by so many people, the term Google is synonymous with searching the internet for something. So, you've probably heard, well, Google it, right? You need to go and use Google. Google actually owns somewhere around 91%, 91 to 92% of the market share, which means that's a huge amount, an overwhelming majority of the market share of search engines. And so you've probably used Google, and you even, know sort of what it looks like. We have a search query up here, and then down here we will have our results, and all of them will have different little things. We're going to talk about how to use Google a little better a little later, along with how to use every search engine a little better. But let's look at some of the other options of search engine that are out there. Microsoft Bing is coming in a long second with about 3% of the market share. But if you look at this, it's very similar to what we saw there. So Bing is the search engine that is developed by Microsoft. And of course, Google and Microsoft sort of go back and forth in their competition as large tech companies. But you can see that the search results look very similar. In this case, we have here's the results that we've got. You've got Bing here and some different stuff like that. Coming in third with around 1% of the market share is Yahoo. And maybe you've heard of Yahoo. Yahoo is a rather older search engine site that's still around. But of course, very few people are still using it at this point. Of course, as we go down this list, fewer and fewer people will tend to use these. But anyway, Yahoo, again, you see it's very similar. And in fact, most of these sites, you'll notice, look very similar to the Google site. And that's because they're trying to mimic the way Google looks, because Google is so popular. It's so popular. But you can see we have basically the same sort of thing. We have search results and different options and some pages we can go to down here. Now, fourth, this one, of course, with all of the Chinese characters, is Baidu. Baidu is not probably one you've ever heard of or used. It is extremely popular in China, though. It dominates the Chinese market with about 76% of the market share. And this is probably not one that I would ever use or you will probably ever use, but it's good to know about because it's so popular in other parts of the world. And of course, it's primarily based for Chinese searching. And then if we look at the third one here, Yandex. Yandex is the dominant search engine in Russia, believe it or not. Let me type in Yandex here. And this just so happens that we're looking, so you can see some Cyrillic alphabet here. That is, of course, Russian. But it's the dominant search engine in Russia. It holds around 46% of the market share in the country. Of course, they're going to use some other search engines there as well. But a lot of people use Yandex, especially in Russia. Now, if we look at some others that are available to us at about half of a percent of a market share, this is DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is all about privacy. At least that's what they claim. Now, that doesn't mean that they actually are all about privacy. There's been some discussion online about how private DuckDuckGo actually is. But if you compare it to Google, it's probably more private than using a Google search, for example. But of course, we have similar things here. I mean, you can see most of these sites look extremely similar to Google. And that's basically by design. The whole point there is to mimic Google because they're so popular, right? We look at the next one, Ask.com at about 0.12% of the market share, very, very small as we go down here. Ask.com is all about asking questions, basically, but it's just another search engine to try to get your answers online. Now the last two here, we've got this one right here called Ecosia, or Ecosia. Not really sure how it is pronounced. But this one with about 0.08% of a market share, very, very, very small, is designed for the ads that the ads that you get when you're using this search engine to go towards planting trees and helping the climate, right? So this is like if you're big into the climate and you want your ad revenue to support things like that, you would use Ecosia. Now, of course, there's some others. Here's just one of the others that you might find. This one is called StartPage. StartPage actually uses all of the big websites like Google to search, but it tries to anonymize your traffic. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it does. It's just that's what it claims that it does, and so you might have to look into it. But it claims to be a very private search engine. So it's one to look into, especially because it claims that you will get similar results, if not identical results, to using Google. All right, so those are all of the major search engines, and of course, most of us are just going to choose to use Google. And despite the fact that there are reasons why maybe you wouldn't want to use Google and use one of these others, Google is still over 90% of the market share. Everyone is using Google. We need to know how to use Google because we're probably using it in some way. Next, let's take a look at how a search engine actually works. And there's sort of 6 steps we can break this into. And the first step we're going to talk about is something called web crawling. So long before the search query ever happens, long before you type anything in, right, we need to create basically a list of all of the different websites out there that are easily accessible for us so that when we create a results page for you, right, we don't have to search the entire internet for it, right? We already sort of have a list of things that would be applicable to your search. And this is called web crawling. So let's take a look over here. Here we have a bunch of little web crawlers. And what web crawlers do, right, they call them crawlers or spiders, and their entire job is to explore the web. So they start from a set of known pages. So maybe we have a couple of hyperlinks here that are well known, right? And they follow links to discover the new pages. So you see we have all these different connections between these different hyperlinks, and the web crawlers are going to systematically follow those. So they move from one page to another, and they're going to collect information along the way. And then they're going to do something called indexing. But real quick before we talk about how they index stuff, let's take a look at what a web crawler might look at whenever it looks at a website. So for most websites nowadays, there's a file that they use. And here we have Wikipedia. So if I go to the root of Wikipedia and I hit right here, it takes me to the web page, right? But I want to change this URL to take me to something else. There's actually a file most websites have nowadays because it is there for the web crawlers to find and tell them sort of what to do. And it's called robots.txt. So if I change that, and I'm just guessing here, and there it is right there. So this is a text file that's being displayed in the browser. And this is the robots.txt file for Wikipedia. And there's something funny. It says misbehaved spiders out there that go way too fast. That's kind of funny. But anyway, the point is, if we look at this, there's a lot of information here about different crawlers. In fact, you can see some of them are called, there's a crawler right there, there's a crawler right there, right? And they talk about feeding search engines. So this is a file designed specifically for those web crawlers to help them understand what Wikipedia wants them to do, what is allowed, what is not allowed, right? And usually the web crawlers will honor that. So after a web crawler has found a page, like Wikipedia, it then needs to do something we call indexing. Let's take a look over here. So there is usually some sort of function, and this is just a little bit of what we call pseudocode, so it looks kind of like code, and it's based sort of off of how Python looks, but this is a function called analyze content, and we're going to look at the content in each URL, and we're going to analyze that content. And then this is just calling the analyze content function. So this is explaining how it works, and this is asking it to do it. So it's going to analyze the content and place it in this over here, which is it's a huge table called the search index. So the web crawlers are constantly doing this. They send this to analyze the content, and then the content gets added to the search index, in however they want the content analyzed. Usually in this case, it's going to be by keyword, and it's going to be associated with URLs and that keyword. And there's a little more to it than that, but this is a base level understanding. Now, after the stuff is indexed, this is when the search query comes in. But let's talk about indexing a little more. So as these web crawlers visit each page, they're going to analyze the content, and then we're going to organize that content in a structured way that makes it easier to retrieve for us later, right? Rather than searching the entire internet every single time. Okay, and we create this whole table where we map keywords to web pages that contain them, basically. So that's what indexing is. Now, the next piece that we need to do is something called ranking. So after we index all of these things, we need to determine the relevance of each page that was indexed to specific queries that are going to be asked, right? So this is going to be very specific to what search engine you're using, and it's really going to determine a lot of things about the search engine, like how effective it is, for example. So, but they're going to use some sort of ranking algorithm, right? And these ranking algorithms are designed to score each web page based on a lot of different factors. For example, like keyword relevance, the quality of the web page, how engaged users tend to be, that type of thing, right? And used to they would do it based on the frequency, and still to a certain degree do the frequency of a keyword. Of course, that's not the most effective way to do it, because people will just spam those keywords to get to raise in the rankings. So the pages that are more relevant will get displayed higher in the search results, and of course Google has gotten very, very good at this, right? Okay, the next thing, let's talk about query processing. So up here we have a search query, which is like a question, right? So it says, how does the search engine work? This is not necessarily the best way to craft a search query, but it is what most people are comfortable with, just asking a question. So when you enter a search query, okay, the search engine is going to process that query to understand what you want from it, right? So it's going to do its best to guess at what you actually are looking for, right? And then what it's going to do is it's going to identify keywords and apply any filters or anything like that, and it's going to fetch data from the search index. So one thing that we can take away from this is asking questions is not necessarily the best way to craft a search query, right? One of the best ways to craft a search query is to literally just use keywords, because those keywords are what are going to be looked for in the search index. So if you craft a query that has the right keywords, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. For example, in this one, search engine and work are probably the three highest value words in this query, because how does an A shows up a lot. So these keywords are going to be more important than the other words in the search query. So anyway, it's going to fetch the data. It's going to send the data back through this little ranking algorithm, and we're going to receive a result, right? So this whole query processing part, this is when it goes through and checks for the keywords in the search index, right? And then it's going to retrieve. So retrieval, the search engines, it's going to retrieve the relevant pages, right? So the relevant URLs from the search index and send that back to us, right? In the order based on their scores from the ranking algorithm. And then the last thing it's going to do is present them in the web page. Right? So it's pretty simple. If we break this down into simple terms, it's going to web crawl, it's going to index, then it's going to rank them, then it's going to, whenever a query is entered, it's going to process the query, then it's going to retrieve the information, and then it's going to present the results on a web page, or SERP, which is search engine results page. So real quick, let's talk about crafting queries for just basic queries for Google, for example, right? If we take a quick look at what we can do here. it's usually better than to, don't ask a question, right? Don't ask a question. And the reason is you're just wasting your time, right? Use keywords, right? Let's use keywords in our queries. And the reason is the keywords are going to give you what you want anyway. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look that based on those keywords at the results page. And you may need to find more information, because here's one of the most difficult things to do when using a search engine. For most of us, it's pretty easy when we know exactly what we're looking for. But sometimes you don't know what you're looking for. So if you will use keywords, right, and then you will review the results that you see and refine your keywords based on those results, you'll be able to determine a little better what you're looking for, right? For example, if I did command line Windows, okay, I could do this, right? So I'm going to find a lot of pages on the Windows command line. Maybe I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, right? Oh, but there I found something that might be a little useful to me in the query results, right? PowerShell. So maybe I add PowerShell to my query, and then I get different results, of course, right? And so when you're trying to find something on the internet, especially when you don't really know exactly what you're trying to find, what are the words I need to use, right? It's very powerful to use keywords, because the keywords will find you relevant pages based on what you're looking for. Instead of writing a question out, it's better to use keywords, right? Then what you're going to do is, you saw what I did, is I found a new thing to put in there, like, oh, maybe shell, or maybe I'm looking for scripting language or system administration. All right, I refined my search with new keywords, and then I repeated, right? We call this iteration. So I would keep going through and repeating, adding new keywords until finally I found what I was looking for, right? Maybe instead of, this is command prompt, maybe instead of command line, I say command prompt, right? And then you see I'm getting different results again. So refining your search based on the keywords is going to get you a lot better results than asking a question over and over and over, because a lot of the words that you're using are not important at all. And this reduces your query to just the things that you think are important about that query, and will help the search engine better guess what you're looking for. Now let's take a look at some advanced search operators. Now I have a table here that I have provided that we're going to take a quick look at. These are some advanced search operators that you can use to do something we call Google dorking or Google hacking. And that's the practice of using these advanced search operators to sort of find information that might not be easily or readily available when you do a standard simple keyword search, right? And then a dork, which is kind of funny. A dork is simply a specific query that we use that uses these operators in an interesting way to find information, right? So if we look at it, we have filters and we have specific operators. Let's take a look at the filters first. So if we scroll over here, we'll see one that says all in text, right? And that's going to search for occurrences of all the keywords given, right? And we have several others here, in text, in URL. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, and here are some examples of how they might be used. So this is going to check inside the URL for specific words, right? In title, site is going to search for results from a specific site. File type is going to searches for specific file types. Num range, so looks for numbers in a range. Before and after, using dates. This is another good one. All in anchor, anchor is like the name of the hyperlink, right? So if you give it a name and then you attach the URL to it, that name is called the anchor. And then we've got author, related, cache. Cache is going to be like, are there cached versions that Google has? If we look at some of the operators over here, though, we've got some different ones. If we want to search for a specific or exact phrase, we're going to put it in quotes, like tend sandwiches here. Or we could use a capital OR or the little vertical bar, also known as a pipe symbol. And is going to search for two different things. So like if I do site facebook.com and Twitter or site twitter.com, this is going to look at both of those, so both possible sites. This will look for ones that look so and is going to show up in both places, or is going to one or the other, right? And then of course we can combine these like we have here. We could use site or and all of those, any number of different combinations of these. Of course, we've got include results with a plus. Exclude is very helpful. Let's say you're looking for Jaguar, right? Jaguar is a car. It is also an animal, and maybe you want the animal and not the car, or the car and not the animal, and so you can exclude certain types of results like Jaguar minus animal or Jaguar minus car, and you'll get those. We'll actually look at that one in just a second. And then there's synonyms with the little tilde symbol. It's a squiggle line, right? This is going to look for synonyms. And then one that's really powerful is the wildcard operator. The wildcard operator is going to allow you to say, I don't know what really goes here, or I don't care what goes here. I'm just looking for stuff that ends in .com, for example, right? So let's take a look at some of these. Just a few quick examples. And we'll come down here, we open up our browser, and let's take a look at using some of these. So let's say that I want to find results that only come from a specific web page. So I want to do site and wikipedia.com, right? So let's just find results that come straight from Wikipedia. And you'll see every single result on the results page only comes from wikipedia.com. So let's take a look at an example here. Here I have Jaguar, and I get images for the car, I get images for the cat, right? Maybe I don't want the car. So if I do minus car, you'll see that I'm getting many more results that are just the Jaguar, the animal, right? If I do minus animal, maybe, let's see, I get just, for the most part, the car, right? There's still a few on here because animal is probably not the best. Maybe I would do minus animal, minus cat. Yeah, let's see if that, yeah. Minus cat got rid of most of them, right? So you can craft queries to get exactly what you want in your images, just like this. Here on another one, we can take a look at, let's try looking at a site, right? So we'll search nasa.gov, and let's look for file types. So maybe nasa.gov and PDFs, right? I hit enter there. It'll look something like this. So we'll find, you'll see all of those say PDF on them at the end. And we got NASA, the Phoenix Mars mission, some guy's name, right? But these are all PDFs that appear at nasa.gov, right? We can actually click on one here, and you'll see it opens up a PDF file that we can look at here. And it looks like this is talking about, looks like it's talking about the Opportunity rover. Very interesting. Anyway, but this is one of the ways that we can search for files. So there are a lot of different combinations, and I'm going to leave some of it to you to explore. But the idea is you can use these different operators to be very powerful in your searches. You could also search, there's one more that I'll throw at you. We could use the wildcard operator to just say, I want to search nasa.gov for any file type, right? And that's not going to be as effective as being specific in what you do, but it may find you different files and things that you can look for. Right? We could also look for NASA. We could find all of the top level domains for NASA here. So most of them are going to be nasa.gov, right? Because that's the actual government agency. But we could look and see if maybe any website that says NASA. Or here's a good one. I really like this one. If I do star.google.com, we can see pretty much all of the different subdomains for Google, right? So here's workspace.google, mapsplatform.google, learning.google, play.google, grow.google, tv.google, lens.google, ai.google, edu.google, right? There's a huge number of these. But you can see a lot of the subdomains for Google using these little special search operators.